So today we're going to go over Chapter 16 on configuring secure passwords in SSH. So for the first step, we're going to configure IP addressing on PCA. So we'll go to the desktop and IP configuration, and we'll set the IPv4 address, which would be 172.16.1.10. Oh wait, I'm not typing. And the subnet mask, which is 255.255.255.0. And the default gateway, which would be 172.16.1.1. And that will be it for PCA. And in the steps it says console into the router from the terminal on PCA, so we would go back to the PC and go into terminal. And from there we will configure the router. First step is to configure the host name, so we would go into privilege exec and then global config, and then the host name will be RTA, and after that we will configure the IP address on the router on gigabit Ethernet 00. So with that we'll do interface gigabit Ethernet 00 and configure the IP address and the subnet mask. And do no shutdown to activate the interface. With that, we will also we will encrypt all plain text passwords. So when we do a running config, we will not see all the passwords that we have configured will not be shown. Then we'll set a minimum password length, so so when someone sets a password, they have to have a minimum of 10 characters. And we have to set a secret password that's strong enough that we will remember for privilege exec. So it'll be enable secret Cisco class exclamation point. Then we'll disable DNS lookup. After that, we'll set the domain name, which will be CCNA.com. So for this step, we'll be creating a user. So when they SSH into the router, they have to input this information so that they could be able to have access to configuring the router. Now we're going to generate the RSA keys with the command crypto key generate RSA. And in this case, we're going to configure 1024 bits. For the next step, we'll do a login block for 180 seconds, which would be 3 minutes, after 4 attempts within a 2-minute period. And that is when it will enable SSH. And for the final steps, to be able to enable SSH, we'll go to the line v2i lines and do a transport input SSH and a login local, so it could enable the username and password that we have set. We'll also set in the line v2i lines the exec timeout for 6 minutes. For the final step, we'll do a copy running configs to save our settings. With that, we are done with the router, so now we're going to be moving on to the switch. we'll be configuring it from the CLI interface. And for this, we'll be basically doing the same steps by setting the host name, SW1, and we will also configure the IP address in VLAN 1. So we should scroll back up and do an interface VLAN 1, IP address 172.16.1.2, and its subnet mask, and do no shutdown to activate the interface. The next step is to now configure the default gateway, which is the same address as the router. So we'll exit out of this and do an IP default gateway 172.16.1.1. And now we have to disable all unused switch ports, which is a good practice for security. So for this step, we'll do an interface range F02 all the way to port 24. We'll also be shutting down Gigabit Ethernet 02 and do a shutdown to turn off all ports. And we'll exit out of that and do service password encryption. And we'll do an enable secret. Let's do class Cisco. And now we'll do a no IP domain lookup. And set the IP domain name as CCNA.com, the same one as the router. We'll do the same thing as setting a username, which will be a student, and then secret. And for this one, we should do password.com. We'll also generate the RSA keys. So key generate RSA, and as the same one before, we'll do 1024 bits. And to enable the SSH, once again, we'll go to the line VTI lines. And then we'll do, if we scroll back up, we do a transport input SSH, and then a login local to once again enable the username and password that we have set for this. And now we'll do an exec mode, exec timeout for 6 minutes. And for our final step, we'll do copy running config startup config, and to save the files, once we have to exit the interface before that, and to privilege exec. And like I said before, copy running config startup config.